don't know how anyone could be alive today without knowing about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. That said, there's so much misinformation, overhype, extremes on all ends. And today we are diving into the crypto and Bitcoin world with crypto expert and veteran in the field, Paul Bradley. Now, this is a long episode, so be sure to give yourself the gift of watching the entire thing, whether it takes a day, a week and a half. Your future self is going to thank you for the time you invest in this episode of the Contract CFO Show. Let's go.
Welcome to the Contract CFO Show, your source for bullshit-free, real talk on finance and business. Here's your host, Michael Anthony.
Welcome back to the Contract CFO Show. I am your host, Michael Anthony. I am a life and financial optimization coach, and today I am fired up. We are talking crypto, we are talking Bitcoin, and if you have any sort of questions, guys, this is going to be a phenomenal show. Not because of me, but because of our guest. Today, we have with us a man. His name is Paul Bradley, and let me tell you, this man, his background is phenomenal. I'm actually going to just read through his quote unquote pedigree, and this is something that I'll say, Paul, thank you for being on. Thank you for pouring in to all of the listeners and those watching on YouTube. Your experience and depth of knowledge of crypto is phenomenal. So Paul is a fintech executive with a shit ton of background experience or back end experience. And he has 20 years experience in the B2B large enterprise, payment engines, applied applications, basically the things that, just think about, like when you go online and you want to pay for something, this is a guy that's developed a lot of that stuff. He's the father of PayCargo. It's the #1 online platform for cargo payments. He was on the first team that enabled a publicly traded bank to settle Litecoin transactions. And by settling, just basically converting from the US dollar to Litecoin. First bank to release that. This man how developed. I'm going to brag on you a little more. You did more than just help develop. You like you're the fucker that developed it. On a team, but it was you. As far as even healthcare, with Aetna, as far as if you make payments online for your health insurance, this guy created it. That's not crypto, but it's back end, payment side of things. He delivered one of the first crypto to fiat solutions in the US back in 2017. And if you're like, what the hell is fiat? I'm going to tell you to watch the episode that says what the fiat is money. All right. So just watch that episode right there, and that'll answer all that for you. And as far as he's releasing cp3me.com in Europe and in the US in the first quarter, along with partnership with the director of the Litecoin Foundation and Charlie Lee, which Charlie Lee is the father of Litecoin, right?
Yeah. He's the man.
He is the man. I've never met him, but I've watched a fair share on him, and yeah, he's a very bright individual. And so, Paul, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show, to talk about crypto. This shit it's in the, it's just in the air right now for stuff. And I was wanting to do an episode on crypto back in December. But then it was like it just didn't fit, and a lot of things started ramping up with it within crypto, and I was like, I don't want to do the like jump on the bandwagon, blah blah blah. I'm a bit of a contrarian at times, and so from that standpoint, I'm glad now, the end of January here, and it's one of those where and also, let's be honest, crypto is it was on a super super hot tear, and now a lot of the fair weather, people are like, oh, it's crashing, it's falling, it's a scam, blah 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 blah. So great time to, in my opinion, it's a great time to do a show on it, because we can remove ourselves from some of the hype and just talk about fundamentals and what is it and why has it grown and stuff like that. So before we get into all that, though, for those of you watching, for those of you listening, this show may not cost you anything than your time, and I don't minimize. That's our number one investment, right? We can never earn more time. We can earn more money. We can get healthier, things of that nature, but we can't get back our time. That being said, it does cost something to produce this. And so, we don't charge you, $10 or whatever to learn from this. But what I would ask, in fact, what I would request of you is that if you are enjoying this episode, share it with someone, tag some people with this, help spread some love, right? Also, subscribe, click, follow at Michael Anthony TV on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, all that jazz. Just helps get the word out about the Contract CFO Show. So thank you guys for your support on that one, and it doesn't cost you anything but like 10 seconds. So Paul, we have a segment that, for those of you that are regular watchers, it's time to get your bottle out, because we're going to do a cheers to you. And today, as far as for those of you that may be new, this is a segment where we just want to celebrate small wins. So often, and sometimes it's big wins, but so often in life, success is made up of 1,000 cuts, of success, rather than just one silver bullet. It's kind of like the lotto this month was in $1 billion basically, and it's like people are like, oh man, if I win the lottery, I could do boom boom boom, when it's like, well, in reality, you can also achieve a lot if you're just faithful with what's in front of you, the little things. And so if you're at home watching, if you're in the car, hopefully you're not drinking if you're in the car. But we all have home offices now, and I think it was like 80% of Americans admitted to day drinking during the lockdowns last spring. And so from that standpoint, get something out. For those of you watching, I actually have something a bit different. It's still tequila, but it's called La Pinta, and it's a pomegranate liqueur. It was something I found in a local liquor shop, and it's made though with 100% blue agave tequila. And I thought it was going to be some shitty tequila, Paul, but it's actually has Clase Azul tequila, which is like they're a legit manufacturer of tequila, and it's 100% agave. It's going to be kind of hard to see it, but La Pinta, link will be in the show notes. If you want to get some, I'll say it's amazing. The only thing is the pomegranate is a bit sugary, and no matter how loose you put this cap on, that fucker gets stuck on there every time. I've had to get those like grips out every single time I've gone to reopen it. So the cap's a little chewed up there. What you got on your end, my friend?
I've got a Christmas gift I'm popping today.
Ooh.
It's Traverse City. It's a rye.
Oh.
It's from my nephew here in the Nashville area. He said it's a little hot, so I should be easy on it. So I've got we know it's water. We'll just say it's PGA. So I'm chasing it with PGA. How does that sound?
There we go. Well, cheers to that. So,
salute.
Oh, yum. So as far as cheers to that. Cheers to you out there. You guys, pick something and celebrate it. And for myself, Paul, uh, I'm gonna celebrate. It's a little thing, but it's also a big thing. And I've had on my heart to, one of my main drivers is to empower people in their life, from getting unstuck and living their full potential. Most of the time, that involves some sort of entrepreneurial or outside of the 9 to 5 realm pursuit. And so this past November, I decided I was going to start Kick-Ass Crew, which is, it's a little bit of goal planning. It's a little bit of accountability. It's a little bit of business and life coaching, all thrown together with a lot of community and like-minded people that are just ready to kick some ass. And so honestly, like, that was scary as shit, kind of throwing myself out there, starting this, that sort of thing. And it launched January 15th. And this crew is truly kicking ass. And for that, all of the kick ass crew, and for all of you out there kicking ass, I salute and I cheers you on that front. So now, how about you? How about you? What's something that we can cheers for you?
Oh, let's see. I'm really busy with my work and entrepreneurial development. So that's good. The first part of the COVID, my a lot of my exotic projects with exotic assets like Bitcoin and Litecoin dried up in the banking realm and in traditional B2B circles. And that
Okay.
was probably the scariest piece of this year, because I was riding a couple of years momentum and had this momentum, and it just dried up. So about July, everything opened up. People realized the digital aspects of what we were working on were legitimate and useful with utility. And so I have been swamped. And so we have final products that are coming out, institutional grade, large US banking rails. Everything's completely legitimate, scalable, and feel we have a B2B procurement platform that no one's even seen coming, with data, with granular type spending platforms and conversions, bridge on, bridge off. And we're going live in Europe within 30 days. And then we're going to bleed over to the US and then into Southeast Asia, but encompass that this first quarter. And it has been a journey to get there, but to have the banks about face during COVID and tell me, every bank would take my call and have long conversations and due diligence, but not a single one of them ever intended to do business with me. They just like me, so they wanted to participate, but it wasn't helpful. Now banks call me and they want to do business, and the due diligence is legitimate, and they're boards of directors of bankers, not entry type personnel. So everything has completely changed within the realm of about 4 to 5 months in the crypto B2B legitimate utility space.
Wow, that's awesome.
It is awesome.
Well, all right. So some of that I'll just say, like, I mean, you're so on the back end of things, and it's like that was some tech jargon, but
Yeah.
I'm gonna what I'm gonna say is basically what I heard is you have a new business that's officially launching in the next 30 days in Europe. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, with some heavy hitter customers and heavy hitter team members. It's a dream come true.
Dude, fucking A right there, brother. So
yeah,
proud
no,
of you.
it's
Cheers.
It's good stuff. And you've known my journey. It's not a paved road that I casually stroll down.
No, and for those watching, how long of it, like, for you to say you're 30 days away, how far back in time would they need to journey with you for when you started this particular portion of your path?
2 years, a solid 2 years for this particular project. And then this May, it will be 4 years that I've had active projects in the marketplace with banks and crypto. So this will be my second cycle, and I can explain what a cycle is here in a bit.
Okay. So what I'm gonna say is, for those of you watching on YouTube, for those of you listening, or maybe you're watching this clip on Instagram, if you're bitching because your dream hasn't manifested after 12 days, after 2 months, after 6 months, shut the fuck up. Like, that's harsh, but what I really mean is, hey, come on, give yourself a runway, give yourself a path, because success takes time, and it rarely looks like what you map it out as. It's great to have a map so that you can understand what your destination is, but in between the start and the finish, it's a whole journey. And just embrace that journey. All right. So whether you're 12 days into something, or maybe you're even 10 years in, don't give up on your dream. Don't give up on it. Keep going till you see it through.
Hey guys, Michael Anthony here, and I have a question for you. Are you out of work or unhappy with your career? Are you tired of your boss giving you crappy raises? How about not being able to provide the life you want for you or your loved ones? Do you earn great money, but you're just tired of being someone else's bitch? If so, I invite you to visit workwithsymmetry.com/change to learn about the career that forever transformed the trajectory of my life. And it could change yours too. Like I said, this career isn't for everyone. But if you're unhappy where you're at, I encourage you to go to workwithsymmetry.com/change and take control of your life.
And Paul, I'm so proud of you for that. And I'm really, really happy for you. And
sorry to interrupt, but we
Yep.
have a saying with our teammates, because right now, as crypto goes up and has its time to shine and comes out of the cracks for a bit, everyone thinks we've had overnight success. And so our standard answer is, the toughest part of our overnight success was the first 10 years.
That's true. That's true. And real quickly here, I know you tend to be, for those of you watching and listening, Paul, this is really an honor. And I'm gonna hopefully embarrass you a little bit here. But Paul is an extremely private guy. Paul keeps to himself. He doesn't, talk. Like, this is the most I've ever heard Paul, even allow anyone to talk about him and his successes and things of that nature. And this episode is dropping on the 29th, which today is a big milestone for you as well, Paul, because it's what is today?
Today is my 50th birthday.
Woo!
I made it.
Hey, happy birthday to that, right?
Thanks,
happy
sir.
birthday. So if everyone could just in unison sing a happy birthday to Paul. I'm not going to do it because all of you would stop listening. If anyone has ever heard or seen me karaoke, you understand why. And there. So happy 50th, and thank you for spending it on the Contract CFO Show with me and all of our watchers and listeners. And so, all right, guys, let's dig into this, Paul. Crypto, and for context, well, first off, I'm going to just make a huge disclaimer. It's on the end of every one of these shows, but I'm going to say it at the front right here and right now as well. This is not investing, financial advice, legal advice. We are not seers. We don't have crystal balls. We are having a conversation. Paul and I are engaging in a conversation where we are expressing our opinions. They are our opinions. They are not fact. That, everything we say could be wrong. Everything we predict could be inaccurate. All right. Before you take any action on anything, it's up to you to do the research. You are the one in control of your life. And so I just want to throw that disclaimer out there that, so that we can be free to just have conversation and say shit that we don't need to be afraid of being held accountable for, as, well, you said this, and so I did X, Y, and Z. We're having a conversation. We're just two dudes that are with the purpose of educating and the purpose of helping other people get to know and understand something in a safe environment. Just understand it's a conversation. So I think I was pretty clear there with that. So that being said, Paul, I actually had asked the some of my kick-ass crew. I told them that we're going to be doing this show, and what type of questions did they have about Bitcoin. And I love I got a few similar questions here, but I'm going to give a few shout outs. So Amanda Katarzi and Tasha Gilbert both said, and I actually like how Tasha said this. She said, "I'll take what the heck is crypto for 500, please."
So, do I get half the 500?
Yeah, 500 what? So Paul, what the heck is crypto?
So crypto, as a simple definition, is and the crypto that I discuss will be decentralized. We'll use Bitcoin as an example. It's a decentralized, centralized ledger. So everyone can see the same exact information at the same time.
For a quick second, what does decentralized mean?
Yeah, and when I encourage those types of questions, feel free to interrupt me, because I live in a technical vacuum, and I just kind of ramble, and people do this. So help everyone by understanding what I'm actually saying. But I'll give you an example with an Amazon, traditional finance Amazon type purchase today.
Okay.
Today, if I wanted to buy a roll of toilet paper from my Amazon account, or a box of toilet paper, throwing it out for the pandemic.
Yep.
I would use a credit or billing platform, so Visa or debit card, Visa or MasterCard-esque banking platform. That transaction would go check and see if I had the funds available, so pre-auth happens, and then through a centralized data warehouse like Google or Apple, so all of their servers and everything that is controlled under, let's just call it one roof. Technically, it's not one roof because they're mirror backups. They're probably 3 roofs, but for this example, it's all in one area. So if that transaction is efficient, it goes through, and Amazon and your bank see your debit, so the removal of those funds, and then that bank will post those to the rest of the world eventually within 24 hours. And so you have a lot of micro debit and credit activity going on in our current system, but everything's housed under one roof, centralized.
And when
that
you
also,
say roof, you're referring to like servers, basically.
Yeah, a data warehouse, one location, a brick and mortar type location.
Yep. Okay, so yeah, I enter my credit card to pay for the box of toilet paper, and it gets sent to a data warehouse somewhere, real quick, and it gets run through everything and back to Amazon, and they approve, and that's literally in the time when I click and it goes to the you've paid screen.
So that's exactly right.
Okay.
So our current central banking system, along with Visa and MasterCard and all of the banking fintech, is all centralized, meaning that it's housed at that bank. It's housed at Visa. It's housed, mechanics are done through this processing company.
Okay.
And so all that information is together. So that's when you hear of, say, Target, and Target has a data breach and they've taken your credit information, and everyone be aware. And so that's the danger of a central location. All of your information's housed in one area. So also, if someone were to come into the U.S. that shouldn't be here, they're on a IBAN watch list or something along the Interpol, and they're making financial transactions for something they shouldn't be doing, then a centralized piece can come in, remove those transactions, and stop it because you have control over your network because you own it and it's in one place, centralized. So the government can come in, you can audit, you can do all these pieces, and between the government, the bank, and MasterCard, they have complete control over that network.
Okay.
So that works. It's efficient, and
that's not a bad thing.
No, that's how our system works under a central bank throughout all of the world, essentially.
Okay. And so I'm glad you're actually, because the other thing I was going to say with the disclaimer at the beginning is also for context. I want the majority of the conversation it's going to involve around Bitcoin, even though we're talking about cryptocurrencies as a whole.
Yeah.
Which would be like, money as a whole, where you have the US dollar, you have the Canadian, you have, the peso, you have, all these different types, but it's still money. We have crypto, but within all the different types of crypto, we're going to primarily focus on Bitcoin just because it's the 900
So
pound
I'll take that a step further.
Okay.
And agree with you, but I call it the Bitcoin ecosystem.
Okay.
The Bitcoin ecosystem has 3 or 4 coins in it that I can elaborate, but those are the ones, and they're the top blue chip offerings. You can guess what they are. We use Litecoin, Ethereum, Bitcoin, and sometimes Bitcoin Cash, but it's not my favorite, but it does have custody solutions.
Yeah.
So these are going to be enterprise, scalable,
those top 4.
Massive, the larger coins, and there's a reason for that I can get into the minutes and the details of that as well. But when I talk about Bitcoin, I refer to the Bitcoin ecosystem.
Okay.
And for me, that's Bitcoin, Litecoin, Ethereum, and Bitcoin Cash.
Perfect. All right. So
Bitcoin Cash.
Hey. Oh, and also I should probably disclose, and we both do own crypto. So as far as we are talking about that stuff, we own it. So on some level, there's an interest, I guess, in, us talking about it, but really, I don't think either of us are talking about this right now because
the main ecosystem of Bitcoin will have it has a life of its own, and nothing we say here is going to tug it either way. So
exactly.
Sometimes if someone asks me, hey, Paul, and this happens these days 3 or 4 times a day, I'm getting text messages of friends, hey, how do I do this? And I always take the time to help them. But they always want to say, we want to make sure you get paid for this. And I say, well, I don't have anything at all to do with it. I don't want your money. I'm not going to facilitate it. I'll help, but we're not moving the needle with this call on an asset like Bitcoin.
Yeah. So what the hell is Bitcoin?
To that, let's talk about what a decentralized versus centralized system is.
Okay, absolutely.
So, as we talk, the centralized piece is able to have sanctions, government influence. The
Controls.
Government actually, we'll use China as an example, manipulate their currency. And who are we kidding? Every country manipulates their currency. We just say China does it because it's not ours.
Yeah.
And there's a currency war going on right now, and global reserve is up in the air, and traditional legs of the United States and stability are looking a little shaky these days, as is the world. But Milton Friedman, one of the great American economists, was still alive during the creation of the internet. And so he was fascinated with the internet and explained how internet functionality can reduce the size of government, because you don't need 6 workers to take your license. You can do it over the internet, and You don't need all of these processes. They're automated over the internet. And he said that reduces the size and control of government substantially. He said the last piece you need is some sort of internet electronic cash. And cash is the key word because it's not a credit card, it's not a platform, it's cash. If I give you $100, or better example, if you give me $100, then in a paper fiat form, and I put that in my pocket and go to sleep, the only way you can get it back is to come to my home and get it from me physically. You can't, there's no recourse, there's no recall or withdrawal, there's no mechanism. It's on me. Cash is the ultimate form of decentralized currency, technically speaking, from a visibility standpoint. So
absolutely it is.
If you're able to bring in an internet form of cash-like functionality, which I do feel it is Bitcoin and can argue that utility argument fairly well at this point,
okay, then
there's no recourse, and a transaction is a transaction. It's done, similar to cash, and the government's not involved in it at all. So the decentralized piece ultimately means that those servers are in people's closets. They're in people's under their bed. They're scattered out, fragmented everywhere all over the world. If you had to turn that network off, where is it? How do you turn it off? You can't turn it off. You can outlaw it and say, if anyone catches you with Bitcoin, you'll go to jail, and it's the death penalty, and make people so afraid to own it. But you can't turn it off. So that's a huge piece of this decentralized piece, is the government doesn't run it, and there is no way to control it without everyone knowing what you're doing, because there's complete visibility on everything.
So okay, and so along those lines, if you're not a tech person, it's basically, so like we started with, because credit cards, I mean, basically are, it's not money, but it's a transaction. It's running transactions.
It's a ledger.
Yeah, it's a ledger. And so from that standpoint, that's digital, but it's all being housed and controlled in one place, where if the government, any government of the world, wanted to shut something down, they can come in and say, no, I'm not going to let that, go through. Or if Visa or MasterCard said, we don't want to let Paul buy any more boxes of toilet paper, they could, they could come in and shut that off, because they control all the computers that the transactions process. Whereas decentralized is saying, I could have a computer, you could have a computer, my aunt, if you're watching, you could have a computer, and everyone has a portion of the servers out there, and it can be someone over in China, someone in the Netherlands, someone in Australia, someone in Portugal, all around the globe. Collectively, those computers all are tied together in a way kind of like the internet. Would you like, they're connected together, processing the transactions.
And the hash rate of that fragmented network is one of the most powerful networks in all the world.
And what's a hash rate?
I believe it's how they measure the processing power of the network.
So the power of the network of crypto is one of the most powerful in the world, right?
Larger than PayPal. I think it's larger than the internet itself. So don't quote me on that. Do your own research. But it's a big number. It's big, and it's not getting smaller. It's growing substantially year over year, really day after day. The way I describe the growth curve versus, a lot of us lived, or at least I did, I lived through the rollout of the internet to begin with.
Yep.
And it took a long time to roll it all in together, 20, 30 years. And a lot of that, the way it was explained to me, was hardware. I had to create an iPhone. I had to create, not me personally, but society, had to create the satellite, had to put the optics into the ground, had to create the server farms. All that is hardware. And you physically have to make it, manufacture it, lay it in the ground, commission it, pay for it, all that. It takes time.
Yeah.
Where with blockchain right now, and you're using the infrastructure of the internet, so there's no hardware, it's all software. Things change really quickly. And I'm in the minutes of this day to day. And if I'm not following major developments, let's say I go on vacation and take, if I'm out of it from the minutes from a month, I'm getting left behind. And
Wow.
and I'm in, I'm neck deep in this. I know all the pieces. If I disengage, it pulls away from me immediately. That's how fast it's moving.
So what about then for someone who's listening to this right now or watching, and they just heard, they're like, yeah, what the hell is Bitcoin? And you just said it changes so much that, you're left out. What would you say to them from a standpoint of, should the average person give a shit, or should they just go, whatever? Or is it as relevant, the changes you're talking about, for the average person? Like,
okay, so the changes are not relevant to the average person because for the most part, the core competency doesn't change. So
the way it works still stays
fundamental. The concept of it, the store of value aspect of it, it's not, as long as you can retrieve your Bitcoin when you need to, which you'll be able to, then that's only getting easier and easier. So all that technology is making it easier for the average person. The functionality, what it can do, when I say things are changing, I mean entire massive banks are coming online and are now your competition. From my standpoint, that's where things are changing.
Okay.
Versus you, the average consumer, it's only getting easier and better. All the competition I face drives solutions for the average person.
Got it.
Let me also add to that. When you say, why even Bitcoin? Like, I look a little scruffy right now. I've got my COVID hair going on. I don't look like an enterprise banker, most likely, to your audience.
You look like a real dude, though. You look like, you know what I'm saying? You look like a real dude.
Very real. Ouch. Yeah, I'm very real.
No, I meant that as a compliment.
Oh no, I hear you. I'm very real and doing it. One of the things that drove me to this to begin with was the freedom and my family and being able to do what I need to do and not having to ask for bank's permission constantly. If you ask a bank's permission, you can be on the sidelines anywhere between a week to 6 months, and you just have no control, no say, no nothing. And that's what drove me to the Bitcoin ecosystem, was I had a lot more freedom. So as I create solutions for the average Joe to be able to participate, let me kind of tell you why I got excited, why it's relevant, and why in 2021 you shouldn't wait too long to completely understand Bitcoin before you make your first move. I hear that a lot. I'm going to take a month or two and really understand this before I get involved. Whatever works for you, bud. But you don't really understand what you're saying, but you will. You'll figure it out. So Bitcoin, the best I can understand from a cyclical standpoint, an investment standpoint, is a 4-year cycle.
Okay.
And that's very real, and there's a reason it's a 4-year cycle.
Yeah.
Every 4 years. So the mining.
Let's but before you dig into that, let's actually, I want to so how does Bitcoin compare to, let's say the US creates a digital dollar, which in reality the money is digital already.
They'll be forced to do that eventually through competition, but yes.
Yeah. Like China's, testing out the digital yen and all that.
Every
stuff.
country is.
Yeah.
Every country is.
And we're just trying to hold on to our power and control right now as long as we can.
We are.
With that. Okay, so that being said, though, the reality is the U.S. dollar is a digital currency right now, for the most part, because it's something like only 10 or 20% of the money actually exists. The rest of it is all ones and zeros on computer screens, and that's digital. It just, they don't have it where we can send it to each other and that sort of thing. So let's say
or a centralized ledger. That's very important.
Okay.
So that a centralized ledger means you can see everybody's transactions, you can see everything.
Yes.
So, and everyone's on the same page, and that's how you can't alter the records, is because it's a public record.
You're not
and
able
if
to
you
fix
alter
the books.
Yeah.
Yep. So if the US had a digital currency today, because that will happen at some point, why would Bitcoin, in your opinion, and maybe you won't agree, but why would you say that Bitcoin is still a better form of money than a digital US dollar or, any fiat money out there?
There's a good argument it's not better.
Okay.
From a hey, I want to buy a cup of coffee standpoint.
All right.
Okay. But right now in the world, governments are struggling. There's a lot of debt, and it becomes a centralized dollar, a digital dollar, a centralized digital asset dollar. I don't even know what you would call it.
Yeah, money. We'll just say money, digital.
Yeah, money. The future of government money is going to still be centralized. The governments can control it. They can devalue it. They can they can do whatever they want to. They own it. And the reason it works is money is a promise that it'll still be worth something tomorrow, and I'll use it. And it's what everything's integrated into. US dollar's not going away in the United States. So, but Bitcoin is an alternative to that. Okay. It's an alternative. They call it non-censorable money. So you can't confiscate my money. If I had dollars, somebody could say, Paul did something horrible and my bank accounts are frozen. Of course, over time, I would show that I didn't do anything. I'm a good guy, and everything would be returned to me. But you can't take my money if it's Bitcoin. You can't seize it. It's mine.
So what about those articles you see where it's like the government seized, Bitcoin and that sort of thing? Like how
they gave it to them. So if I had an illegal drug operation and I had a wallet, I had 1,000 Bitcoin on this device.
Yep.
And the cops came through my door. That's my choice. I can give it to them or not give it to them. So if they can take it and put me in jail, but they can't take it from me, I still have control over it.
Okay. Yeah.
Now I'm probably going to do a plea bargain at that point and give it to them to try to get out of jail. So that's how they confiscate it, because someone they're in trouble and they give it up, and not because they are so technologically savvy they take it. You can't do that.
Okay. All right. And that's a great clarification there. It's they seized it by intimidation, by leveraging someone who's doing something they shouldn't be doing, that sort of thing, which the government does that already.
Oh yeah, no, it's easy for them, and Bitcoin makes it harder. So if this was my device, I had 100 Bitcoin on.
Yep.
The cops came in and take it from me, but I'm able to get out the door and go to Bolivia. All I have to do is buy another blank device, put in my seed phrase, and my money pops right back up wherever I am. So let
that, for if you're watching, hit rewind 15 seconds, listen to Paul say that again, and just put that in your pipe and smoke it. Because the money isn't right on that device you just showed, which is a wallet It's a digital wallet. The money's not there. The money is what's stored on the ledgers, which are on all those computers all around the world, right?
Yeah, that's your safety deposit box. And if you lose your device, or it gets confiscated, or it falls to the bottom of a river, you just simply get a new device and use your keys to open up your safety deposit box, essentially.
Yep.
So it's housed there for you, and it's your responsibility to make sure it's safe. So that's one piece that's really exciting. I tie that to individual freedom. I'm a big freedom guy. I've got customers in banks in Africa that are working with me that really see the benefit for them to remain relevant, and also give their people some control of their own money. So there's a lot of freedom and uniqueness around it from a conceptual standpoint. But let me tell you why it's relevant now.
Okay.
As we are looking at massive M1 money supply additions, trillions of dollars just overnight they've added to our money supply, diluting everything. I believe inflation is inevitable at this point. You're going to want to own some assets, whether it's a house or gold or silver or a digital asset. And a real estate, any of those are going to be good choices, but there are nuances with how do I liquidate it? How can I buy food if I buy a house? And there are benefits of it. But as the interest rates globally are hovering at near zero, there are some unique problems large treasury is having, especially in Europe.
Treasury being the source of the money, the government bank.
Treasury in this instance would be, say, BMW's their money they own. So if I'm Mercedes-Benz in Germany,
yep,
and after a year producing cars, I have $1 billion. These are just making up numbers. I have $1 billion in revenue and 600 million in profits. I know it's more than that, but I take that 600 million. What do I do with it? Some goes back into R&D, but a lot of that goes into your treasury, and you make money with it. Right now in Europe, with the interest rates at negative, it costs Mercedes-Benz money to keep cash in the bank.
And guys, for those of you watching, and your mind may be like, what the hell? What?
Yeah.
How nuts is that? I remember, I had to research negative interest rates for a couple of weeks, not to understand it, but for my brain to accept that actually what I was reading is what I was reading. That it's like, well, banks make money from having money in, and because they can create more money, but the economics are so screwed up right now that they actually are having to charge people to keep money in their bank because the system is so on edge.
So what do you do with that money?
Yeah.
And so you have traditional finance and technical analysis answers, which is hard currency. Gold is a traditional or historical solution in times like this.
Yep.
Traditional assets, a lot of people would go into, say, farmland or commercial buildings and such, commercial real estate.
Hard physical type assets.
But that's changing now too. What commercial property are you going to buy in the middle of COVID that's a slam dunk? I've got commercial property, and I'm having to waive a lot of fees. I have a 4% increase for everyone every year. Waived it. I take probably 6 calls a month from people who can't pay their rent, and I work with them. It's become a full-time job to manage the people I'm trying to help on my commercial properties. But that doesn't really do me a lot of good. And if you have a lot of money, hundreds of millions and billions of dollars in your treasury, you got to find a solution. So there have been publicly traded companies in the United States. MicroStrategy is one of them. I think it's MicroStrategy.
Yeah, MicroStrategy is.
Michael Saylor basically took some pretty big publicly traded company risks and purchased a large amount of Bitcoin at around $8,000 or $10,000, and everybody laughed at him. They did. And a month later, he's quadrupled his treasury. And all of a sudden, their competition now says, okay, our competition just made 4x out of doing nothing, and we're at a disadvantage. We have to do it. And so the push is legitimately moving. I was getting B2B business customers calls 6 months ago saying, hey man, we're just checking in, how's the space? Now they call me, Paul, you call me back. I'm waiting. There's just such anxiety in their voice. And you've never heard someone of that position with anxiety in their voice before. There's something very real and pressing happening.
Yeah.
So the custody solutions and Ways, multi-signatures, and all the institutional type finance controls are now automated pieces of the Bitcoin ecosystem. So there's a lot more functionality and pieces you can do with this. Oh, and by the way, it's liquid. If you had gold that quadrupled, what are you going to do with it?
Yeah.
Load up the truck, drive it to Memphis.
Yeah, I do own some it's not gold. I own some silver, not a ton, but I do own some. And it's great every year, or every month when I do my net worth, I look at it and whatever. But in the back of my head, I go, well, what the hell, if I went and got it, what am I going to do with it? I can't go to, Publix or Aldi, or, I can't buy groceries. The liquor store is not going to take it, that sort of thing. It's a fixed, hard type thing, asset. It's not very liquid with that.
It's better to have it than to not.
Yep.
However, what are you going to do with it?
Yeah. How do I convert it to something that's useful? Whereas Bitcoin, so this actually is another question. Kevin in the Kick-Ass crew asked, how do you transform these currencies into cash for groceries? Does it convert to something I can put into birthday cards for my nieces and nephews? And so
that's the plumbing that lots of people are working on. So I've got solutions for that. My how does it convert? In my solution, you would have two ways to do it. One, you can say, I want $100, just say $1,000. I want $1,000 of my Bitcoin in my bank account. It'll be there in the morning. So that's an off ramp. So I can liquidate within 24 hours to your bank account.
Okay.
Or if you are a business or an individual and want to make a $100 purchase right this second, then I'll issue you a debit Visa platform where your cryptocurrency is tied to that particular card through a wallet. You just make a transaction at anywhere Visa is accepted. I convert it in the back, settle with the bank. You have no idea. And ideally, your balances are growing. So if you had $1,000 cash on a piece of plastic, every time you swiped it, you'd have X amount less. But if you have that platform on a Bitcoin and Bitcoin's market cap is going up, I could have $1,000 on there, spend 200, and at the end of the day have an $1,100 balance. So that's a pretty fun thing if you understand the trend of Bitcoin. Sometimes it's going up, sometimes it's going down, but from a macro.
For now, there is a delay from when we're recording this to when it shows, and in crypto, the more you study it, the more there's a natural. It's actually somewhat healthy for it to be somewhat volatile. Like it was designed for that in this phase of its maturing. As far as the last few days, it's actually been plummeting, quote unquote plummeting. Still, you go back 6 weeks and it's 100% up from where it was. But
if you get into Bitcoin to make some quick money from a micro perspective in a few days, you won't sleep, you won't eat, and you're probably not going to be successful at it.
Yeah.
That's not some people love that, but I can't do that.
Yep.
So, but I will tell you from a macro perspective, you zoom out a little bit, we're trending up, uh, for about 10 years.
Yeah.
For about 10 years, we're trending up, and 2021 will be a very unique year in that cycle.
Yes. So I want to get to that, but not quite yet. I just want to tie in because you were talking a lot from a business, from a corporation standpoint of businesses. What did they do with their assets? And okay, they have some money, they set it in the bank, and now in Europe, they're having to pay money to keep that money in there instead of it earning anything. And what do they do? And so there are these companies that are converting, and we're talking large amounts, like MicroStrategy at this point, because he did a second round, and I want to say it's like $800 million worth of dollars he converted into Bitcoin, which at this point would be worth probably like
He's looking good.
$1.5 to $2 billion, maybe a little more than 2 billion because of when he invested and where it's at. From that standpoint. But what I would say is, for those of you watching, for those of you listening, you don't check out on this, because what I would say is, if it's a struggle for businesses with their money, why is it not a struggle with your money? If it's a threat for them, why is it not a threat for you? And that's kind of it is a threat. It's a threat. When Paul talked about diluting value. If the US dollar has a certain worth at, we have, I don't know, $10 trillion out there, or what, I'm just making up shit, but numbers. But if we had $10 trillion and it has a value of 10 trillion, and overnight, which happened in September, in the month of September, we actually created out of thin air more money in 1 month than the US government had created in its entire existence. Now, fact check that. It may be back like 100 and whatever years. There may have been a couple years left out on that stat, but we're talking the history of the US. You add up all the money that's created, and in one single month, the Fed created more money than that entire amount adding up collectively had. And so when you do that, it's like a rare car or a rare baseball cards, Pokemon cards, shit like that. People are understanding that it's rare because there's not many of them. That's where the worth is coming from. But if literally overnight, a rookie Michael Jordan Fleer card that I recently saw, some people are predicting it's going to be worth $1 million. So let's say it was worth $1 million. And then, Paul, overnight, you buy that, you have it, and the next morning you wake up and there's $1 trillion more of those baseball cards. How much is that shit worth now? And that, my friends, is what is happening with fiat money right now. That's what's happening. And I'm not gonna, we're not judging countries for what they're doing. It's just cause and effect. We're saying 1 + 1 = 2. And that's where sometimes inflation I know for me, I struggled for years trying to understand inflation. And it's like, I'll make this simple. Watch Pulp Fiction, one of my favorite movies, and there's one of those scenes in it where John Travolta is with Uma Thurman, and she orders a $5 milkshake, and that was expensive in 1994. And he says to her this line, he goes, "What does a $5 milkshake taste like?" Well, now at McDonald's, a milkshake is $5. And so over time, price goes up. When I travel, a bottle of frickin' water was $5. And so I actually said to my buddy when I was traveling, I was like, what does a $5 bottle of water taste like? Referencing the Pulp Fiction thing. Well, over time, you need more of, in this case, the dollar to buy the same thing. Now, if we look back and, we're creatures of habit. So if we're like, well, okay, in my lifetime, it's gone up a little bit and boom, 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 boom. So what's the big deal? Well, note that our results today are today's result is because of yesterday's action. Or with inflation, it might be a year or 2 years or 10 years or 20 years. And so the actions being taken today in the past year, and with the new presidential regime coming in and talking about pumping trillions more dollars, and if you look at the last 20 years, do this. If you're watching, if you're listening, do a search of the US debt over the last 20 years for context, and take a look at in 2000 where it was at versus 2020, or 2001 versus 2021, and look at that graph, and then start asking yourself, and then go back 20 more years and see, and you're going to see there was a huge unprecedented uptick in the last 20 years. And so what does that mean for us holding dollars in our bank account? So that was a little bit of a diatribe, but I wanted to drill in on that to then talk about Bitcoin and what happens from an inflationary standpoint, or delusional, or not delusional, dilution of, we talked about multiplying the Michael Jordan rookie cards. Well, if you have a Bitcoin, is that going to be worth less over time, and why? Like from a fundamental standpoint.
Think about it from a graph, and I know I don't have a visual in front of me, but I'll try to do it. So with fiat, we start with very little. That's your 5-cent soda, your 10-cent candy bar that your grandparents talked about, and then it kind of goes up, and then it more and more and more, $1.50, $2, $5 bottle of water. There's more fiat that comes into the system the further along the cycle is. It's the exact opposite with an asset, especially the crypto assets. And this has to do everything with the 4-year cycle. So originally, I think if you did a Bitcoin transaction, you were one of the decentralized servers. Every time you got a reward of 50 Bitcoins. So 10 years ago, if your server or your mining picked up a transaction, you got 50 Bitcoins. And 50 Bitcoins back then was probably about 25 bucks worth. They're about 50-cent dollar piece. There's just a lot of them out there. They're not very valuable.
And to pause real quick, so to connect back to something that you talked about earlier, having this decentralized network, and then I was like, okay, so I could have a computer, you could have a computer, someone in France, those computers are doing what's called mining, which is really just they're not digging for anything. They're not discovering Bitcoin. In reality, what they're doing is processing the transactions, and each transaction, and correct me on this, but each transaction gets verified on 3 separate, and it gets verified and stored as on a public record on 3 separate computers somewhere around the globe. And they're like, and I might be dumbing this down a little bit, but in essence, they're doing a complex math to then say, yep, this transaction occurred. Your computer happens to get the same transaction. It processes that. And someone watching, you watching your computer does that. All 3 of them verify, 0.005 Bitcoin went from my wallet to your wallet, Paul, and it's locked in there. And as a result, for the computer doing the work, aka mining, the computer owner gets a reward of X amount of Bitcoin for processing that. Would you say, is that a fair?
That's a good, and to elaborate on that a little bit, it's when so every computer in the world fights to do the transaction because everybody wants the rewards.
Okay.
The ones that win it do the processing, similar to what Amazon would do, but it's splintered all over the world. And then that creates a block. Okay. And whatever transactions they do creates a block. And that block is then attached to the former block to create a non-penetrable chain that cannot be edited or audited, or it can be audited, but not edited or changed in any capacity. So that in turn is the blockchain because it's a public record that's stored on every computer. So every computer will have access to that and see those records. And that's why it's called blockchain. The mining pieces create that block and add it to the last one with an identifier that can't be changed.
So if my computer crashed, and let's say it didn't crash, but my house caught on fire and it melts down, the blockchain did not lose any data because your computer has it and watching
everywhere.
Everyone's computer has it, and it's constantly matching up to make sure it's the same.
Yeah, no, that's true. It's like an old broadcast email. I hit enter, it goes to everyone.
Okay.
That's the pro and con of it. It's not exactly efficient, but we're not talking about using it for everyday payments here either. So I'm not going to buy my coffee with a Bitcoin for lots of reasons in the near future.
Yes.
One of them is I think the price is going up, so I'm not going to spend $10 on a coffee and have that be a $100 or $200 opportunity cost for me. So you got to know where you are in the piece and the cycle.
Okay, so then let's get into, well, actually, all right, we're gonna get to this cycle thing. We're gonna get to it because that's a big thing for me as well. I had, and I'm trying to find where it was. Somebody asked, oh crap! And now that I went to, okay, what they asked, and I think it was Joel Cleland. I actually asked this on Facebook, and Joel asked. He said, with the and I'm just going to paraphrase here, but with the dawn of like supercomputers, out there, what, and I don't know if you can speak to this. I didn't know that they actually existed, but as far as like how safe is the blockchain?
I can't speak to it from a technical standpoint, but I've had this question and I can kind of simplify it best I can. So I think we're all getting really ahead of ourselves. So, flying cars, they're talking about flying cars. So I'm going to sell my car I take my daughter to school with tomorrow because flying cars are going to be here and cars are going to be obsolete. That's the same type of argument. So, Bitcoin is far from perfect, but I think the supercomputer aspect is from an encryption standpoint. And last I saw, we're not anywhere near the real computer power to decrypt any of this stuff. We're not even near it. Conceptually, we could be, but that's about as far into it as we are.
Okay.
And keep in mind that as that technology comes online, then it's not like Bitcoin just has to sit there and take it. So as cryptologists and supercomputers emerge, then there will be better and supercomputer-esque ways to mass produce Bitcoin. So they will grow together. And I think people are getting really ahead of themselves when they try to shoot it out of the water. Okay. But to that point, you can shoot Bitcoin out of the water from a vacuum, apples to apples comparison of, say, how Visa works today from an efficiency, how many transactions per second. But there's so many side chains coming online. I can relate it back to the internet. So you originally had TCP/IP protocols that were developed back in the late 70s and early 80s before anybody ever heard of the internet. And they're layers. You have a security layer, you have a communication layer, you've got all these layers stacked to create the transmission. similar to blockchain. You may have a Bitcoin transaction, but you have a Lightning transaction side chain go to have an instantaneous confirmation, so your merchant knows, yeah, this money is coming to me, but then the transaction process is offline. And so there are a lot of ways to make this efficient and technologically speaking to use the core, similar to how we had gold as your dollar was tied to gold back in the day. This, you didn't actually spend gold when you had a gold note, you had a note. And that it's a similar concept to that. So I'm not a proponent that Bitcoin should be the new money for the world, but it is a bad ass. I like to talk between Bitcoin and gold. That's where the real squeeze of the conversation is. Most people understand how gold is used. Think of Bitcoin as a digital gold 3.0, where I can do all the things I want to do with gold that I can't do with gold. So that's kind of a place to start saying, hey, that's interesting. And then this is the monetary policies built into it. So that's the
and yeah, what do you mean? Are you talking about the finite amount in that?
Yeah. So
okay,
they're
so
only
that
going
would be getting back to where we kind of rabbit trailed a little about with fiat money. It's on this like hockey curve where it starts low, or a hockey stick, and it's like at the bottom of the stick, and then all of a sudden it's whoop, it just goes straight up for the amount of money needed to keep things afloat. Whereas with Bitcoin, you were saying
it's the exact opposite. And where most people have heard, so Bitcoin's been around about 10 years. I was an executive at PayCargo in Miami, and in 2011, I said, I should get some Bitcoin because I think it's going to be pretty cool. And I logged onto my computer. I think it was Friday. I had a flight back to Nashville, and I didn't understand it. There wasn't any way I could just pay for Bitcoin. I had to mine it or wire money to Japan, or it was way out there.
Wow.
And there's tons of it. I could have bought 1,000 of it for $500, and I was like, I'll figure it out later. They're just everywhere. But now that curve is changing to where Bitcoin is starting to become very scarce. There's not enough liquidity in the market today for Bitcoin.
And liquidity means availability.
Yeah, let me tell you what liquidity means in my world real quick.
Yeah, please do.
You have to have, and these are regulations. We apply banking regulations. Everything we do is banking grade.
Okay.
So in order to do this properly, we have to have reserves of Bitcoin for the volume of transactions we do. So we can rent the Bitcoin, we can buy the Bitcoin. We have to hold them for whatever we put through the system. Also, because there is a delay, and the same thing with US dollars and banking today. If I electronically send you a Bitcoin right this second, and you want to cash it out right this second and have, what is it, 30,000? I don't know, 30-ish,
32,
or,
whatever.
Yeah, whatever.
Or whatever it is when this airs, God knows.
Yeah, it's trending up. The trend is your friend from a macro perspective.
Yep.
But I would need to have at least as many Bitcoin in a liquidity pool, because when I pay you your Bitcoin, that's where your Bitcoin comes from. It comes from a liquidity pool, and then my transaction settles in to replace that void. So if I have a transaction for one Bitcoin, I'm going to need 2 to make it work.
Okay. Because you need to give a Bitcoin to me because I'm asking for it. And
instantly.
You need to go get another Bitcoin to replace the one you just gave.
Yeah, that's right. So that's exactly right. And in order to do that in a timely, real-time scenario, I got to have one to give you on hand.
Yep.
It's the way it works with an ATM. That's just the way it works. So as Bitcoin becomes more and more popular and more solutions come online, the liquidity needed, the Bitcoin that are actually in the market floating around there on exchanges, becomes more desirable. Also, because of the cycle that we'll talk about in a minute,
yep.
more and more people are demanding it right now. And the people that do have it, for example, the handful of Bitcoin I own, I don't have it on an exchange. It's not available for anyone to have liquid. And it's mine.
Yeah.
So they're offline. And you'll see the people holding Bitcoin is at an all-time high right now. And it's making the liquidity piece very difficult for the institutions. And that's what drives up the price.
So it's in a fundamental way, it's supply and demand. Now
it is absolutely supply and demand.
So let me ask this though: why not just make more Bitcoin? We make more U.S. dollars.
But number one, that's not part of the monetary policy. I don't know that you could. And why would you need to? Because the utility piece of Bitcoin is its finite supply that makes it a hard asset. So the fact that it
that's what I wanted to get to, is that with Bitcoin, we're not like there's a systemized schedule.
But let me finish.
Yeah.
So that's pretty easy to understand, that finite piece. However, Ethereum, that I would still lump into the Bitcoin ecosystem, doesn't have a finite piece. So why is that price going up? And the answer is the same, because they have a schedule of when they release coins. But everyone needs the Ethereum asset for their projects, and then they lock it up in a smart contract through a loan or what have you, and there's just no Ethereum around. So when everything gets locked up in smart contracts and utilized, they're not available for liquidity, and it drives the price up. So right now, you have a nascent industry that is starting to grow, exploding bamboo style out of the ground, and it is absorbing everything around it. It's even tearing into the gold's market cap. It's there. It's opportune. COVID has sent this into a frenzy, because everyone realizes we have to go digital, and this is the digital foundation of which economics and being able to move money makes a lot of sense. There's value there. It really is digital gold.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's so good. Like, because and that's where I personally, and I could be wrong, I am a big proponent of Bitcoin. I understand Ethereum long term has a lot of potential, but I personally don't mess with Ethereum, because I like the simplicity. Even though so much of Ethereum does end up tying in with the Bitcoin eco, and it's pulling things and what have you. For me, I go, okay, Bitcoin, I understand that there's a set schedule of how Bitcoin are created. There's only X number total that will ever be in existence. And so, I think it was you maybe a year ago or something said, when you have billionaires who want to buy something and they're being told no, because it doesn't exist, what's going to happen to the value? Back to that baseball card or basketball card. If you have it and there's 10, not just your broke uncle, but 10 very wealthy individuals who have resources to get that card, and they're all bidding against each other to get that card, because they're bought in to where the future of it is going, the price of that card is going to go up X amount, on it. And that's no different than with Bitcoin. From my standpoint, now it's not just one card, because if it was one card, it would be no good. But there's, I don't know, a million or whatever that number is. You can Google it and find out how many Bitcoin will be made total and how many are available right now. But from that standpoint, there is a fixed amount with it. Now, what if I've had people ask me, Paul, okay, a Bitcoin, in their mind, they go, there's $1, there's a Bitcoin. Well, I need a shit ton of dollars to buy a Bitcoin. So a Bitcoin's out of my range. How do I buy a Bitcoin? I don't have $35,000, or I don't even, if it's dropped a little bit since this went, let's say it quote unquote plummeted, Bitcoin, the biggest Ponzi scam, blah, 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 blah. And it's at $25,000. at the time of this broadcast. What would you say to someone who goes, well, I can't buy a Bitcoin. I want Bitcoin, but I can't buy Bitcoin because I don't have $25,000.
No, so you don't have to buy. That's a great question. I get that all the time. And that also opens the door to a lot of confusion about cryptocurrency, because each one of these assets, I call them digital assets, has different reserve amounts, and some have 10 million, some have 100,000, some have 50 billion. So you have to know how many coins are in circulation. Why is one coin 10 cents and one coin 10,000 bucks? What's the difference? Well, I assure you there are lots of differences. So I go back to those four main blue chip coins.
Yep.
And
Bitcoin,
Ethereum, Litecoin, Bitcoin Cash. And you look at the market cap. You can go to here, I'll give you, I think it's called coinmarketcap.com.
Okay.
You go to coinmarketcap.com, you look up the volume. It'll show you the market cap is important, what number it is in, like, by asset class. So who has the most assets under management? Bitcoin's first, Ethereum second, I believe. Then you get into the Litecoins and some of the Link and Polkadot's one making its rounds. So you want to be able to understand the volume and the market cap, and those are two huge pieces. Okay. So you may either buy a fraction of a Bitcoin. So I can buy 0.01 Bitcoin that will go and rise and fall with the market proportionate to a whole Bitcoin. So I don't need a whole one to start my journey. But a lot of people, if they're going to drop $1,000, they don't want their balance to say 0.012, or they want a bigger number. So Litecoin is a great. So Litecoin, I think, has 84 million coins. So it's, okay, I think 4x more than Bitcoin, but its price is not 4x lower. It's a significant low. Litecoin is my horse in the race, because most of these institutions will realize that Litecoin is very similar to Bitcoin from a liquidity standpoint, from a usage standpoint, but it's a whole lot less expensive, not only per coin, but you get a lot more value. So I would suggest that as these assets mature and blossom, that Bitcoin will not have the most gains. So it's going to have, let's say it goes up 300%. It's just there's no projection there. Yep. It's just for easy math. It goes up 3x in the next 6 months.
Okay.
Litecoin's going to go up 5x. Ethereum will go up 5x. You'll have some other coins that'll go up 10x. So Bitcoin's not your biggest bang for the buck squeeze out there, but it is the most conservative, makes the most sense, has the least speculative risk than any coins out there. So if I were going to take a first run at this, I literally was up, at 1 o'clock this morning when I went to bed talking to friends, and then I had a 4 a.m. call this morning, and my inboxes are full on both ends of that saying, what should I do? And I went, buy $50 or something and just see how it goes.
Yeah.
Get your feet wet. Dollar cost averaging is my recommendation. If you had $100,000 you wanted to put into Bitcoin, and last night, the 20, whatever the date is or whatever the profits are, if you had put 100,000 last night in your one fail purchase, you'd be down today, and it would suck, and it's not a good feeling. But statistics show if you would take that 100,000 and buy $25,000 purchases over a scheduled time regulated, you're going to have better pricing, and it will perform better over time. Now, I don't have those facts with me, but I've seen it over and over. It's called dollar cost averaging, and you just don't want to go all in with everything on day one.
Yep. Or You better have some, some balls of steel, a stomach that's like iron.
Oh,
Um,
I've cried on the floor like a baby many a times. My
yep.
daughter's like, "What's going on?" I'm like, Just give me a second. Just give me a second." It's a punch in the gut when the things don't go your way.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Hey guys, Michael Anthony here, and I have a question for you. Are you out of work or unhappy with your career? Are you tired of your boss giving you crappy raises? How about not being able to provide the life you want for you or your loved ones? Do you earn great money, but you're just tired of being someone else's bitch? If so, I invite you to visit workwithsymmetry.com/change to learn about the career that forever transformed the trajectory of my life. And it could change yours too. Like I said, this career isn't for everyone, but if you're unhappy where you're at, I encourage you to go to workwithsymmetry.com/change and take control of your life.
All right, so that's really good. The answer would be you can buy, much like a dollar can be broken down into pennies. And it's one of those where, for me, and Litecoin, you do your research on Litecoin, because Litecoin, I think it does have some very valid upside potential and validity in the market, and it will psychologically, like you said, let you look and say, oh, I have 10 Litecoin, or 8 Litecoin instead of 0.0001 Bitcoin, type thing. At the end of the day, though, I myself would rather have 0.000001 of a digital asset that is not speculative. Like, it has a lot of momentum. Now, to some degree, I think all crypto is speculative.
Bitcoin's a sure bet from a digital asset standpoint.
As sure as a digital asset can be.
Well, I'm here to tell you they're not going away, and I see things that most people don't see, and it's changed everything that I do. So
yep.
I have a visibility that most people don't have.
Yeah.
It's not getting smaller, and less people are talking about it.
Even with Janet Yellen being like,
Yellen.
Yep. Like, that doesn't move from your perch, from your vantage point, your insight into how
it absolutely moves it. So what I heard her say and her preemptive, this is our direction, reinforces everything with the Bitcoin argument. Higher taxes, more government control, more government centralization. I don't want any part of that. I mean, I'll pay my taxes, of course.
Yeah.
There's nothing illegal, but if I cannot have my train hitched to a disaster in the wake, I can sleep like a baby. And I have just been sleeping great. So none of this political noise is even registering on my radar right now, because they are not in control of what's happening with Bitcoin. And it's really easy to see the government says, hey, our US dollar is where everyone should be playing. And they're not, and they just keep saying that. Well, where's everyone going? This is the best deal in town. And it's not anymore. So the noise will get louder, but the actions, are they going to stifle the United States industries of, this is a global movement. If they ban it, you're going to send us to the dark ages. So it's a catch-22. And if they did ban it, good luck.
So
I don't even know how.
So from that standpoint, because that's where, Yellen was saying, as far as about Bitcoin, which, interestingly enough, they came out that during Trump's early days, he charged I forget, maybe the Fed Reserve or something, with, hey, take down Bitcoin.
Oh,
and
yeah, no, they
only grew. It only grew. And the first day of Biden in office, Yellen comes out saying, Yellen, coming out saying she's like, we got to regulate this, we got to track this, blah, 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 blah. And so from that standpoint, for a new listener, a new person watching this right now, does that shake you at all?
No, and I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
Because 4 years ago, I had a conversation with James Bullard, who was the Fed governor out of St. Louis,
Okay.
and
So this is someone who knows their, like, this
no,
isn't just
they
a
do.
cousin.
Milton Friedman is a hero of his. He knows his stuff. So he essentially explained that Bitcoin was a niche solution to trade. So it's not taking over the world, but it does fit and create a solution to make trade more efficient and better in the niche space. So as it stands, we welcome it, we support it, we want it to grow. If it can make uh, it better and more streamlined and efficiency, if it can help capitalism, then it's a go. And that's exactly the basis that it grew from. And it can handle regulations. Regulations for Bitcoin are good because it provides the comfort space for larger institutions and banks to thrive in that environment. And as you know, banks are not very tech savvy. You have firms that provide the technology on behalf of the banks, and that's exactly what's happening with Bitcoin. So
that's
banks,
where you're providing technology for the banks to do what they want, all within regulation. So, okay, so
I will tell you, to that point, I received an email this morning after an introduction last night to a very large bank, to a board member at that bank, who responded immediately with an exclamation point. We're so happy you're looking at our bank. And how soon can we get together and have some discovery? And that is unheard of.
Wow.
But that was what I woke up to this morning. So when I say this is changing literally overnight, that's what I mean.
Yep. Okay. And I'll just chime in on that. And again, these are our opinions based on, experience, insights, what we believe.
Passion.
And yeah, and from that standpoint, I'll say that, there's that phrase, follow the money. Well, banks control the money. We can be all up in arms about, you look at, it doesn't matter who the hell has been in office. Banks are the ones, in my opinion, controlling our the world and our government, and in a lot of ways. And so from that standpoint, if the banks are instituting things, that to me is I appreciate hearing that, Paul, because that to me that's a green light. Like, it's not saying it's all smooth sailing. I'm sure there'll be turbulence and ups and downs and blah 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 blah. But at the end of the day, if the people, the institutions controlling the money supply, because the economy, without an economy, the government doesn't exist, because the government only exists off taxes. Like like that, there has to be taxes coming in. Otherwise, their printing of money instantly creates inflation if there's not money coming in.
Right.
And so, that's where the banks are the ones who control the economy, because they're giving loans, they're approving things, they're doing, and all that sort of stuff. So that is helpful. Now, as far as, all right, let's get to, and I'm going to say, do two plugs here. One, for people, if you're watching this, and my God, Paul, I feel like we could do a 5-hour, thing.
Yeah.
And
we're just touching the surface.
Like,
right
I
now.
feel like we're not even touching the surface. And
Yeah,
so
I agree.
I would love to have you back at some point in the future where we can just continue to have this discussion and unpack things. And for those of you watching, leave comments. You leave comments, whether you're seeing a clip on Instagram or on Facebook or on YouTube. You're watching this as a whole on YouTube. If you're listening to it, go to @MichaelAnthonyTV. Leave messages for things you want us to discuss and unpack about crypto for future shows. With that being said, let's leave on a high note, regarding, as far as kind of the cycles, and because that's something that I have felt a responsibility for, and I'm gonna maybe take 3 minutes to just kind of give a little bit of my background in history regarding crypto, for the passion. And honestly, I have a conviction. And that's why I am so grateful, Paul, that you've come on and you're sharing so generously with everyone. So for me, it was like 2013. It was Thanksgiving. I'm not the best with years, and I could go back to actually fact check the exact cycles, but anyone can go back and Google where it was at for certain years. And it was Thanksgiving, the week of Thanksgiving, I want to say in 13. And a buddy of mine had reached out and had been talking to me about this Bitcoin thing. And I did some research on it. And what resonated with me was the fact that it was decentralized. It couldn't be controlled and manipulated, that there was a set amount. I understand that if you have 100 of something and more people start wanting that, the value of those 100 things go up. And also, you don't need 7-8 trillion people utilizing a niche currency, a niche digital asset. You don't need 8 trillion people on the planet all wanting it in order for the value to go up. You could have 100,000 hardcore people and the value is going to go up. You could have 1 million, that type of thing. And so I said, you know what, screw it. And it was on a tear. My buddy had started talking to me about it, and it was like around 100 and maybe $200, and I'm making some of this up, but it was per Bitcoin around that. And he was contemplating, and I was a little slow. I'm like, oh, we're a little goofy, whatever. But then he pulled the trigger at around like maybe 400, 500, and he reached out to me, and I was like, you know what the hell not. And I ended up buying in around 800. It was in the sevens, like somewhere around there. I bought a couple of them. And I was like, worst case scenario, if this goes to pot, I'm out a couple grand. I've lost more than that. At the time I had a lot of money in mutual funds, which I'm not a fan of because of fees and whatever. Just that's me personally. But as far as I was like, I've lost more on fees and mutual funds that have lost me money than, this. So what the hell, I'll throw it in. It, spiked up to like $1,200-$1,300. And we were like, oh, hell yeah. And then, then like, a week later, it was down at like $300. And it was like,
for years.
It was like, what the fuck? And that actually caused me to research quite a bit more on Bitcoin, because I was like, do I pull my money out, or is this really what I thought it was? And do I believe in it from an ethos standpoint? And I opted to believe in it and commit to it and ride it out and watch. And sadly, I watched without actually applying my belief for a number of years, which has shifted tremendously in the last year and a half, tremendously. And so so bought at 700, it went up to say 1,200, crashed at 200-300. I had family members not mocking me, because they're they're not like
not
that.
To your face.
but would send me an email about how Bitcoin is a scam or a Ponzi or this or that. And and I love my family, so if they're watching this,
Of course.
it's all in good. I love you guys. But now those Bitcoin that I bought for 700 that crashed at 200, but then went up to 19, that crashed, that blah blah. Bottom line, today they're worth like 30. We'll just be generic and say in the 30s per Bitcoin. And so, Paul, if you would speak from a technical standpoint as to, because there is a reason that Bitcoin past doesn't predict future always. However, there are some established patterns in the history of Bitcoin and some things that were laid out on the front end for people to understand, that those who don't understand will get screwed with. Like, they could lose a shit ton of money if they're just in the FOMO. Everyone's putting money in, so let me put money in. I'm going to become an instant millionaire. And, in the short term, they could lose a shit ton of money. If they don't understand things because they're doing things with emotion. So would you spend the last however, amount of time here on the show just kind of unpacking what you've discovered regarding patterns and the history and cycles? You let out talking about cycles. So what is a cycle of Bitcoin?
Those are great questions. I'm going to try to keep it just from a simple standpoint, because this is where you can really lose me in rabbit holes.
All right. So maybe we'll have a part 2 for the future sometime.
So I will start off by saying I was aware of Bitcoin, but I was working at a large commercial bank.
Okay.
And, USD, banking, I work from a piece of strength, not hobbies or gimmicks. So, and I left that position voluntarily to pursue this full time, just so you know what impact it had on me.
Okay, that's important.
I first came, it was early in this last cycle, so late 2016, early 2017. A friend of mine from Nashville, who's a successful businessman, essentially did what you did. He put $200,000 in and had no idea what it was, listened to psychics, and embarrassing. I was like, oh my God, no, I couldn't fathom what was happening. You're doing what? And there were newsletters about aliens, and you're just like, what? I respected this guy. He turned 200,000 into about 19 million and then proceeded to lose it all.
Wow.
So that was his cycle. My cycle wasn't that dramatic. I put in, let's say 10 grand, got up to about 300. And if it goes to 300, it's going to go to 3 million, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, absolutely.
I didn't know what I was doing, and you just write it and you learn the hard way. So that's when I got into it and said, okay, what's really going on here? Because I believe in it conceptually.
Yeah.
But it's crashing. So you learn pretty quickly the trend is your friend and you're not going to change it. So understand what the trend is. Secondly, you don't need to necessarily understand what's going on to be part of this. So I don't need to know the history of Bitcoin, the origin of Bitcoin, who owns it, how it works, to have my money double if I just hold one. And I highly recommend everyone have a Bitcoin.
Yes.
And then it is a 4-year cycle, and I'll get into that a little bit. And then lastly, where we are now, I believe it's called the cotillion effect. And then so that we're at the cotillion effect right now with what Yellen and Biden and everyone's doing.
Okay.
And so I want to just kind of touch on that.
Okay.
Bitcoin is decentralized. You have these decentralized mining operations. My team giggles every time I say this. And for 6 months, I didn't even, I'm so into my minutes. They're laughing. I'm not even paying attention to them. But I always say I have miners in my closet. So that, I have Bitcoin miners in my closet at work. But I'm always talking about the miners in my closet, and they just giggle and giggle and giggle. It took me 6 months to even understand what I was saying. But the cycle is, you have the decentralized miners, and mining is an actual industry. There are large facilities, hundreds of millions of dollars, VC, it's big time globally. And there are lots of reasons for that I won't get into all of those pieces right now. Yep. So you have miners that provide these decentralized authorizations for these networks 24/7. And they get mining rewards. They get paid in Bitcoin for these authorizations, and everyone fights to do the authorizations so they get more Bitcoin. Every 4 years, that overnight, so there's a date, and kind of when it is 4 years out, that your rewards, your Bitcoin you gets divided in half. So you might get 25 Bitcoin for doing an equation today and have for the last 4 years. But the very next day, you get half your income. It goes down to 12 and a half. and I think it's at 6 and I'm not sure where it is now. It's either 12 or I think it's at 6 and something.
I think it's
So
single digit.
I think you're right. So overnight, those giant mining facilities and all these miners and mom and pops and even me, you're not going to liquidate something that is literally worth half the day than it was the day before. So collectively, as an industry, people wait for the price to go up. And so we had a halving occur, I believe, in May of 19, something like that. No, 20.
Yeah, this past year, April.
Yeah, and
April
so
May of 20.
And so what happens? This is the cycle. When that happens overnight.
Just to clarify, the halving is that overnight where it went from say 12 down to 6 being rewarded. Half. Yep, and that is how new Bitcoin are created, and it's on schedule. And so it's not all the Bitcoin that ever exists today, but there's a schedule of Bitcoin are being released on a schedule based on processes, and then there reaches a point where no more are created, like 150 years from now or something like that.
So to that point, as the economy is releasing more and more money into M1 money supply, the exact opposite is happening with Bitcoin. There's less around, and people are scrambling for it. So what happens every 4 years is essentially a bubble. The miners hang on. They're going to want the most return for their investment. So they're hoarding it right now. Quite frankly, they're hoarding it.
Yep.
They're not releasing it into the market. Why would I release it into the market at 30 something when I can release it in at 80 something? That's their revenue. So collectively, everyone just kind of sits on their Bitcoin because they know what's about to happen. And there's a lot of research that shows that it happens on a regular cycle. And I've got charts and graphs and all that fun stuff. So I'm a believer in the 4-year cycle. I've seen it. I'm witnessing it. All my projections to the B2B group are happening, and they're saying, oh my God, it's happening. And it is happening.
It is.
So 2021 is a year that no one's letting their Bitcoin go because they're expecting the price to go higher. Now, will that continue to 1 million? Doubtful.
Yep. This cycle.
Yeah, I won't tell you the number I think it's going to because, I sound crazy, but it's going to go up to a 6-figure number. I believe.
I'm gonna dig in a little bit on that. Let's like you think is 500,000 or like do you want to give any sort of range or window what you're
No, I'll tell you it's an echo of a previous run, and if you apply that echo with some tweak it a little bit.
Yep.
The guy that told me this, I got to tell you the story on it. The guy that told me this, we were snowboarding with Javon Curse at his Breckenridge condo, ski in, ski off in his Porsche. Great weekend. Everybody's having a blast, talking crypto. And he tells me this number. And I think to myself, God, I feel sorry for this guy. I really respected him until he said this. Like, that's insane.
And at the time, he says this number, like, how much is Bitcoin at that time? Like, 3,000 or
something like that.
Okay.
Something just like, you don't know if it's going up. You don't know. I didn't know what it was going to do.
Yep.
So he said he thought it was going to go to 300,000 at the peak in 2021. And I was like, oh, that hurts, dude. And as I rolled my eyes and laughed at him and said, I hope he's going to do okay. Everything he told me for the next year and a half happened like clockwork.
Wow.
And you start to realize this is on a more of a cycle than an independent run. And so add that to the cotillion effect. Why should you get a Bitcoin right now? Why is it relevant? I don't have a doctorate of
money, of finance.
Yeah. I want to say ecology, economics.
Oh, there we go.
but I have a lot of understanding of micro and macro type economics from planning and business planning and such. And so So in this particular year, with however, you have negative interest rates, you have all this flood of M1 supply, you see assets are growing. I believe just Bitcoin alone is going to grow based on that alone. But you have something called the cotillion effect that
what are you going to unpack what that means?
So
Okay.
basically that's the money flow of when the government prints money, the essence of it. So Paul, as an individual at his home right now, is probably the last cat on the bucket list who's going to get money sent to them directly from the government. So, and this is how inflation happens. So I would say banks are going to get the money first. Insurance companies, large business. Historically, these big players in these industries are handed the responsibility to distribute the funds equally.
Yep.
Okay, so you have a government print a bunch of money, and you'll recognize that's what's happening now. Give the quantitative easing or whatever you want to call it, which, to digress a bit, if we're looking on a chart, Obama's bump was about this much. Trump's bump was about this much.
Yeah.
I think in 10 years, whoever said president's bump's going to be about this. Like it's heading in a perfectly pieced way. So take your head off of Trump and Biden and the individuals that you think run our country. They don't. These are trends. These are rhythms. They're doing their best they can to make it look like they're in control, but it's obvious they're less and less. So the cotillion effect is these guys get the money before you do, before I do.
Okay.
I'm last in line. So what happens is you have a lot of assets out there. Think of rural commercial property and rural type places that are historically depressed right now, pricing wise. And you're just flooding these institutions with money. What they do is they go out and buy all these cheap assets. They don't want them. They've never been to them. They don't care. But they put them on their books with all this free money. And then it drives the pricing up. So when you want it, you got to have more money to buy it. And it's supposed to make things work well, but it's a freaking racket. And we're stuck at the bottom of the racket. So if you're able to have an asset that's going up faster than they can print money and have liquidity to get out of it, damn, that's a good vehicle right now. So in my 2021 stint, I'm not selling Bitcoin. I'm not really trading it. That's not necessarily true. I'd get out if it goes really high and get back in and resettle. But I typically don't want to pay the taxes, and I know where it's going. I feel I know where it's going. I said 300 grand, but I really, really think it's going to get to 80 or 100 guaranteed. Slam dunk, we're going to get to 100. Whether it goes on and makes that other run, but at 100, that's 2.5 from where we are now. I think Litecoin's got a lot of room to run. Historically, it'll make a big move against Bitcoin itself in the next 60 to 90 days. Historically, every 4 years, it just makes this huge run against Bitcoin. So there are all these oscillating pieces moving around, and it comes down to timing, to a little bit of understanding. But Warren Buffett says, a rising tide raises all ships.
Yep.
That's as simple as it can be. And when the trend is your friend and it's trending up.
Yeah.
You can buy what they call a shit coin, which is just a not irrelevant piece that doesn't have a lot of volume, and it'll go up with the tide.
Yep.
But
what happens when
it'll
crashes?
crash down overnight. You don't know when, but you can. And my philosophy there is pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered. So if you really want to
say that again, because that is critical.
Pigs get fat, and I'm a pig, and I want to get fat and muddy.
Yep.
But a hog just overdoes it, and they go to market, they're going to get slaughtered.
Yes.
So I'm not going to be greedy, but I'm going to make huge gains, but I'm going to stick to my plan and get out. I'm not going to try to catch that last 10% and lose 80% of it. So I have a strategy going into this. When I hit certain thresholds, I have exit strategies. I will exit the market in 2021, and I'll go to stable coins. I won't bring it back into USD.
All right. Well, that actually, that's another whole thing, stablecoin to talk about, in
Yeah,
the
we'll have
future.
some more conversations, because there's just it's hard to take this journey and make it into some pretty 3 or 4 sentences. And then if I could just say, you have people that are calling in with questions and Ponzi scheme, just in theory, and every podcast. There's another piece that I realized pretty quickly.
Okay.
I know where I stand on this based on my professional knowledge, and have all the confidence in the world with these platforms and how this works and the metrics of how it works. But not everyone does. And early on, I would debate, oh, no, you're wrong. This is waste of time and energy. The people that helped me get where I needed to be, I didn't have to convince them. They wanted to do it. They understood it. And the people that said, you're full of shit, I said, call me in 2 years. We'll have the discussion. Maybe I am. I'm either going to be rich or homeless, and let's find out. But
that's true. That's true.
But there was no further conversation. It's just a black hole of, if you don't get it, then it's not on me to tell you. So, and for freedom, for the American public, and really the world, I have cab drivers in Vegas say, will you please help me? My family's like, this can be our key. And I tear up. You don't realize how many people are struggling outside of the United States right now. I didn't, at least. So the notion that you can get in front of, you don't need to own a home.
Yep.
You don't need to own gold. You just need $20 and an asset that can grow, that you can liquidate quickly. Just get your feet wet.
Yeah.
They say don't get in more than you can lose, which is a fair statement. So you don't want to liquidate your house and go dive into this. You're going to get hurt in anything you do during that. This isn't going to take off tomorrow and you never look back and you missed your window. Whenever it makes a huge run up, it comes back and settles down. Don't FOMO in, which means you chase it. Don't chase that market. You're going to get hurt. Buy the motherfucking dips, like they say. When it goes down, buy a little more, but don't chase it. And when you look at it and you have a euphoric feeling like, oh my gosh, I can't believe my money's grown this much, maybe you should get out.
Yeah, those
wisdom. Are the fundamental pieces and it's in 2021. The whole world is saying they think it's going to peak mid-December in 2021. But I know the market well enough. When everyone says it's going to do something, it's going to do something else. The market is not there to help you. It's there to take everything you have and run away with it. So,
you know what? Thank you for saying that right there, because that's something for you watching. Guys, you gotta always remember, especially in banking and finance, it's what's in it for me. And not to say there's not people out there that will help and things of that nature, but when you're talking about big Wall Street things, but just look at their history. It's someone once said, for all the mutual fund managers, they were all had their yachts, and they were like, where's all your clients' yachts, type thing. And again, I'm not bashing, I'm just saying, have open eyes. And Paul,
and to that point, you look at major institutions. I'll pick on Jamie Dimon at Chase, and JP Morgan, but historically he came out in 2017, Bitcoin's a Ponzi.
Yep.
They annihilated it and the price went down, and you found out later that his European branch was buying the whole time. So
and you'll fucking scoundrel there.
No, that's the pool we're in. So you say, well, that would never happen in traditional banking. Yeah, it happens all the time. So one of the toughest things I learned in 2017 that really changed how I live from an understanding standpoint was I was the one who happened to be creating a lot of Bitcoin news at the time.
Okay.
When I would read my own press, it wasn't even close to what was happening. It was very wow, look at that. But it didn't talk about the core of what was happening. So I realized that it's all, you can't believe what you read. And if a bank says, oh, that's a fraud, like Deutsche Bank said the other day, oh, we're not, I guarantee you they're buying or about to get into the market. Yep. So you just don't.
Or as far as there's this show on HBO called Silicon Valley where they talk about crypto a little bit here and there. And one of the guys was like, he's a big crypto, and anyways, the other character says, well, Warren Buffett, he says it's a Ponzi scheme. And his reply I thought was brilliant. It's the other side of this where he said, well, do you think Warren, because Warren Buffett's worth, I don't know, I'm going to say $160 billion. I'm just making up the number. But he said, well, don't you think Warren Buffett has 160 billion reasons to say that Bitcoin is a Ponzi?
Yeah.
And it's just from the standpoint of, so bought in on something that's old and established. And again, determine this on yourself, do your research.
So that brings up the last 2 points are, and COVID really showed me this in a way I didn't understand. But the last 2 points are, when I went to the bank president and explained to them the project I was doing many moons ago, I was patting myself on the back, like, look what I figured out. And they just glazed over and looked like, what are you doing? Why would you do this? What does it act? And I came to realize they already control the money. Why do they need they're not looking for a solution. They're done. So the institutions are not driving this, but they are more now because of the negative interest rates. But people who are tired of the system and everything being a traditional system that they're probably locked out of, they're the ones that are driving a lot of this change. And then lastly, denial. So, and I'll openly admit this, during COVID, earlier in the COVID piece, my daughter was exposed to a friend that had COVID, or was exposed. So technically I should say, okay, we're locking it down. But in my head, I couldn't quite accept that I had been exposed to COVID. And so I found myself going, oh, we're fine. Oh, she can go spend the night somewhere. Oh, we're fine. So we never got sick. Everything, was fine. But I realized, analyzing it, oh my God, I made bad decisions that I just couldn't accept. And so who's going to bet against the US? Who's going to bet against the banking system? They've always been there.
Yeah.
But it's changing. And if you get so headstrong, locked into thinking, oh, it'll always be this way. There's so many times in history where you're just wrong. And so the denial aspect with family members, and especially older family members, you'll never convince them. It's like trying to talk about religion or something really near and dear to their personal fabric. They don't understand banking, but they accept that banking works.
Yeah.
I had a friend along those lines when I think it was about January of 2020. I said to them, I'm taking some money off the table for stocks. You probably want to do the same thing. Why? There's absolutely no reason to do that. Markets going to the moon. Trees don't grow to the moon, and yields are screwed right now. Like, look, the fundamentals are screwed. And so they said, well, I took some money out of the market and I was right. They did not. And their reason to me was, the Fed would never let that happen. And I said, what happened? The market go down? And she's like, Donald Trump is not going to let the market go down. And that was her argument. And she believed it. And she didn't quite understand what she was saying. And it's just wrong. But her conviction to that was, everything's going to be fine, because everything's always fine, Paul. I'm drinking my coffee. The world isn't exploding. I think you're crazy, and and are getting ahead of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I said, this isn't for everyone, but one of us is going to be very wrong in that equation. And I'm not pro Bitcoin for everything. We will have a hybrid solution, hybrid meaning USD and all the different, it's all commerce.
Mm-hmm.
But if you put all your eggs in one basket right now, and those are the traditional baskets that Biden's saying, hey, you should do this. There's a lot of fear in that.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of quotes throughout all of history. There's nothing more permanent than a temporary government solution. So as we look at what the government and the inefficiencies, and quite frankly, the point blank confusion of what they need to do to get us out of this hole.
Yeah.
This is an independent insurance policy that I don't see how you can afford to not have it. And that's my conviction and where I come from with this.
Oh, that's so good. And for those of you watching and listening, if you are watch the Contract CFO show or at all, or engage with Michael Anthony TV at all, that I am a huge proponent of learning. You think like a boss and take control of your money, and that comes from ownership. It's ownership, and ownership starts with, hey, maybe instead of binging the latest series on Netflix this week, you put on some documentaries. You read those financial news things that normally you glaze over on. You do some internal introspective thinking for yourself on a lot of what was discussed in this show, and say, what do you believe? And stop living someone else's version of their plan for your life, and live your plan for your life, because it's empowerment. And I found, and I think, Paul, you'd probably agree, that even at those times when you were crying, crying on the floor, there's a sense of freedom and empowerment, because if you're the one who screwed it up, you're the one who can fix it. It's not someone else screwed it. The government didn't screw it up. My job didn't screw it up. I screwed it up, and I can fix it now. I'm not waiting helplessly for someone else to do that. And so for those of you watching and listening, again, drop comments about what you want to hear, further questions, clarifiers, all that sort of stuff. And go take ownership over your life, because you are the king and queen of your castle. And so don't give those keys to someone else. Paul, thank you so much. Happy 5-0, brother.
Thanks, man.
It was such an honor having you on. Just really appreciate your heart to teach, to educate, to empower, and just continue to have a kick-ass day. I know you were up early before this show. You were in like 9 different countries on Zooms and shit like that. So thank you so much for carving time out. And I know you actually have another something to go to pretty much, after this. So thank you so much, guys. Like, subscribe, share. Let's continue spreading the love, making the impact, helping yourself and others take control of their life, think like a boss. It's it. So till next time, peace.
That's a wrap. Congrats on investing in yourself with the Contract CFO Show, hosted by Michael Anthony. If you've enjoyed today's show, please leave a comment and tell a friend to check it out on YouTube or however they get their podcast on. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Michael Anthony TV. Visit michaelanthonytv.com to find show notes and past episodes. Plus, you can join the conversation by submitting questions and topics you want to hear. And remember, tomorrow can be better than today. The choice is yours. P.S. Don't be a dumbass. Remember, this is a conversation and not meant to be personal or legal advice.